It's summer 2022, and I'm at a nuclear power station just outside London, delivering one of my training sessions on inclusive cultures. The room is hot. The air conditioning is not working. The walls are bright. Bzz, 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 bzz. The plant manager's phone rings. Someone has attempted suicide. I stand there, like a swan, calm on the surface, but frantically struggling underneath. What do? Do I continue? I'm instructed to continue. The plant manager leaves, and I finish the session. The plant manager returns, and thankfully the individual got the help and support that they needed. But it doesn't always end up this way. I'm a safety engineer, and I've spent my career creating physically safe working environments, designing out hazards, and dealing with things that you can measure, monitor, and design out. But you can't do that for silence. In childhood, we see silence creep in. We see the way that society tells boys and girls what they can and cannot be. And that affects how we grow up and how we show up and how we know what we can be when we're older. Stories are like lighthouses. Just think about a lighthouse. A lighthouse is an object that's physically present. It's engineered there on purpose to give a guiding light to the ships, vessels, and anyone who may be at sea that needs to find their way. Stories are like lighthouses. In the construction, manufacturing, and process industries in the United Kingdom, the industries within which I was employed, I found out a few years ago that the highest rate of loss of life by occupation, when broken down by occupation, was due to suicide. I could not believe this data, so I commissioned some of my own research. In 2019, we launched our Masculinity in Engineering survey, and over 900 engineers responded. The results were stark. 1 in 5 engineers reported that they had lost a work colleague to suicide. 1 in 5 engineers also reported suicidal ideation or self-harm personally. When we reran the survey 3 years later, in 2021, mid-pandemic, that number went up to 1 in 4. 1 in 4 engineers reporting suicidal ideation or self-harm. They're not just statistics. They're faces, people, names. We need more lighthouses. We need to break the silence. I saw this play out for myself once, actually, when I was delivering another training session. And this time I was at a railway depot, just outside London, and I was brought in by the HR director and sat down, and my learners were in front of me, like all you beautiful people here today. Except in this instance, there were only 4 of them. 4 guys sat there, arms crossed, body language closed. They did not want to be here. And I said, hello, I'm not holding you hostage. You can leave if you want. I'm just here to be a trainer. But what happened in that training session was remarkable. It was round about the time of Brexit, and one of the gentlemen said, I don't see what the problem is with it. I think it will be absolutely fantastic. We'll be able to control our own borders, and we won't have any issues at all. And his colleague was silent. And he said, do you know, Mark, I go home at night, and my wife, who's Polish, she's struggling. She doesn't know if she'll get indefinite leave to remain. What does it mean? Are we going to have to spend time apart? Is she going to get deported? And I have to contain it for her. And I come into the workplace, zip, and he puts the experience in his man box. And he turns to his colleague in that session and he says, and you just keep going on and on and on. I have had enough. I draw their attention back to me and I say, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. That was very brave of you. That engineer spoke out because we were able to help break the silence. He was able to talk about something, about his identity, about a life experience that he was going through that otherwise wasn't coming up in common workplace dialogue. We need more lighthouses. And it's ironic. This is where I find myself at this point in time, finding this is incredibly ironic. Because if the intention of our diversity, equity and inclusion programs are to create places where you can be your whole self, bring your whole self to work, be your best version of yourself, then clearly that's not working for the majority group. Otherwise, if it was, people would be open, men would be able to be open about whatever the root cause is that at the extreme end is driving that high incident rate of suicidal ideation and self-harm. We need more stories, we need more lighthouses. So how do we fix this? This is what I'm on a mission to try and help solve. I've developed a safe leader framework, a SAFE framework. S stands for share. Share your story. What is it that by you being open about something that you've been through will help someone else connect with that? We're such complex creatures and we've got so much more going on in our lives that we don't often open up and beam out what we're going through. We're not wired to do that. We have to proactively do that, and it doesn't come naturally to men. A stands for act. Take action on the stories that you hear. What are you a little bit uncomfortable about? What identity groups do you not associate with or you don't have in your day-to-day life? Go and find out about their causes. Walk in their shoes. That links to part feel, the third part, F, feel. When you get curious about an identity group which you don't belong to, and you lean into that discomfort, because we're naturally wired to try and move away from that, when we lean into that, we start to expand our own learned experience. Lived experience, learned experience. We've all got a narrow frame of reference from our own lived experience, but by sharing that, we help each other expand our learned experience. So together, we have a much greater point of connection. And doing that, and doing it well, is E, empowered. Share, act, feel, empower. And this isn't just professional, it's also personal. I'm a father, and I have a daughter and a son. And when my son was younger, we used to play this little game called The Hungry Caterpillar. Has anyone heard of that book, The Hungry Caterpillar? Okay. So after bath time, we would get Hunter out the bath, we'd put a towel around him, and we'd go into his bedroom. And I would narrate, one day, there was a very hungry caterpillar who ate 1 apple, 2 bananas, 3 strawberries, 4 plums, 5 apricots. You get my point. And we'd keep going until one day the caterpillar had a tiny bit of lettuce to settle its stomach. And the caterpillar wraps itself up in a tight cocoon to transform. And with that, my son puts the towel round himself and wraps himself up small. 2 weeks pass, and the caterpillar nibbles through the cocoon and bursts out like a beautiful butterfly. And with that, my son takes his towel off, throws it to the side, and he flies around the room, butt naked, like a beautiful butterfly. That was 3 years ago, and Hunter's now 7. And what's beautiful is that Hunter hasn't yet lost the innocence, the purity, the joy. He hasn't yet been boxed in. And rest assured, I'll make sure to do my best that he never is. Because we know that the way that society tries to box in our little boys, be strong, don't cry, man up. Little by little, wings get clipped. And we've all felt that at some point. Constrained, restricted, held back. That's a universal truth that we can all share and relate to. We need more stories. We need more lighthouses. That's why my call to action is to encourage you to think about your stories, especially if you're a man in the room. What is it that by you open up about will help others do the same? I've worked with a leadership team where 3 people out of the 10 people on that team were actually struggling with fertility. They didn't know that about one another. And they'd been working together for a very long time. It transpired that when we then looked at that conversation, at the large scale, other people were also going through that too in the workplace. So they then transformed their workplace policies and increased leave, etc. So if you are a leader, what vulnerability can you share? Because you cast a leadership shadow across the organization that has currency. Your picture, your signature, your voice. It has an impact and creates an emotional reaction in people. And very often leaders shy away from fear of causing offense or saying the wrong thing or, rocking the boat too much, that you don't do it. But when you do it, it's one of the strongest levers for leadership change. Irrespective of whatever external pressures we're currently going through in society. Leaders sharing their stories help. And if you have a teammate, check in on them. Ask them how they really are and actively listen. Tune out the nonverbal communication. Tune into the nonverbal communication, Tune out your inner monologue that might be going through your head. Because very often your desire to respond is just to make them feel better, make you feel better. Ask your teammates how they really are and wait for the real answer. And finally, what about you? What's your story? What have you got to share with everyone? Sometimes the objective doesn't have to be about being a lighthouse to shine outwards. Sometimes just doing that introspection for yourself can help reconcile some things. And then should you choose to be a lighthouse for others, then you can take that place. So leaders, teammates, and you, and especially men, we need to get together to start making this change because our stories matter as well, but we also have the power to help create a better workplace and generally society for everyone. Safe. Share, act, feel, empower. We all have stories. We all go through storms, but we can all be lighthouses for one another together. And I'd encourage you to be safe and lead the way with safe leadership. Thank you.